Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Our guest today is Gregory Wright, but everyone calls him G. He is a producer and media trainer at All Things Relax Studios, along with his partner Sandi D, queen of Podcast Zen, and is the host of the All Things Relax podcast. They help coaches, creative entrepreneurs, and authors how to connect with their audience in their signature Rockstar media training program. G knows what makes or breaks a great interview, and now he is sharing proven tips and techniques to help performers promote their business, book, or product. However, you do not have to be a coach, creative entrepreneur, or author to benefit from G's services. Anyone who wants or needs to clarify their message, communicate more effectively, and clearly express themselves can learn how to with G's help. After all, the whole world is our stage. G, Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl, for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
It is an honor. So tell us how you got involved in creating this media company to help train authors and coaches, blah, 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 become better communicators and to be able to clarify their message and kind of like narrow it down so it really makes sense.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, my name's Gregory, but everyone calls me G. So everyone, I'm just known as G. I'm the producer and rock star media trainer at All Things Relax Studios. And prior to that, I was a tour manager and live sound engineer for over 25 years and was very fortunate to be able to travel the planet and work with amazing artists, some of your favorite bands and lead singers, and lots of great artists out there just sharing their story, right, through music. And as we were traveling all over the planet, we did a ton of media. So like, as you said, I've seen thousands of interviews, and I've seen it happen right in front of me of where it could make a career, or unfortunately it could break a career. So what we're doing with the Rockstar Media Training Program is I'm tapping into the 25 years of experience of working with these well-known artists and combining that with my partner, Sandi D, queen of Podcast Zen, and her 25 years of experience, and the fact that she's an introvert, Virgo, and was terrified of public speaking. And I'm the extrovert Gemini, and I have no problem going on stage in front of 10,000 people. So what we're doing is we're combining all our experience and everything, and showing, like you said, coaches, authors, creative entrepreneurs, and more, how to speak with confidence and clarity. We show them how to have a crystal clear message and really connect with their audience.
So first of all, I had no idea that there was such a thing as an introverted Virgo. I did not know that.
Yes, I've got to put you in touch with Sandi. Like we were talking off camera, she just interviewed one of your friends, and I want you to meet Sandi. You'll love her. Yeah, she's awesome.
Because I'm a Virgo.
Oh, you're a Virgo as well. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm pretty far from introverted, but that's a whole nother story. But I love what you said about the importance of the clarity of your message. And I'm just going to share a little story with you that I did a book event at a public library a couple of weeks ago, and I was absolutely flummoxed and horrified. There were only 11 authors, and we each got 5 minutes to stand up and, share our elevator speech, which 5 minutes is a long time.
Right.
So an hour and a half later, we were still listening to the author's pitch. And one of the authors, who's a friend of mine, was sitting next to me. I know. And she says, authors are their own worst enemy. And it was just so painful to listen to some of them. And it's like, there's got to be a way to be able to help people like that hone their message and fine tune it.
Yeah, it really starts with, this is what we show our band members. That's what we call our clients, people that join the band members, right? Join the band. It really starts with your why you do what you do. And I think a lot of people maybe I think it's one of two ways. They either have an idea of what their why is, but they might have some trouble kind of really fine tuning what it is, or the opposite is they're not really sure. They're trying like 10 different things. So I think when you know your why and you narrow it down, and that's what we do with the Rockstar Media Training, is yeah, an hour and a half is, I mean, I've been with artists that sing for an hour and a half, but they do about 10 or 15 songs, or 20
Yeah.
songs in that time. That's, it really comes down to like what we can talk about later on too, is the set list. And I think that's one of the keys, is that when you are doing a public speech, right, you're telling a story, you're doing a 5-minute or 10-minute, whatever, you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you rehearse it and you know how that's going to go, and you got to really look at your audience's body language too. I mean, if people are looking at their watches and they're like, okay, I've got to go, that's why a lot of public speakers will be like in closing, and that's when everyone sits up and goes, oh, thank God, it's like, but it really comes down to just rehearsing and practicing. And I think when people get up on stage, a lot of people have this. Sandi had this fear. That's what we talk about with in the band and stuff. But is that, if you're nervous, there's a point where you don't know what to say, but then also that nerve can take over and just go on and on and on and on. And I think there's something in the brain that's like, okay, I can't stop, or I don't want to stop, or they don't know how to end it. You know what I mean? Like a song, right?
I love the fact that you use a lot of the I guess metaphors or whatever, like the set list and the band and even rehearsal. And of course you do have to rehearse, speeches and that type of thing, but they're all related to the music industry.
Yes. Yeah. That's been my life for 25 years. Even since I was 5 years old, I've always been singing or pretending to be a radio DJ, or at 16, I became a radio DJ. So I think I've been around music my entire life. And now, in the latter part of the years, just turned 50 a couple months ago. I know. All right. Yeah. Some gray hair here, but I found that, music's always been part of my life. And the one thing that I love about music and is storytelling. And now I have an opportunity to show other people how to share their story.
Well, first of all, happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
Second of all, 50 is fabulous.
Yes, it is. It is.
When I turned 50, my whole world changed, and it became so wonderful. And it was just so great. My 50s were the best decade of my life, so that when I turned 60, I went running toward it with open arms, going, bring it on, baby. I'm ready.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. I think as we've been on the planet longer, I mean, think about all the experience that we have. And that's something that it's really hard to put like a number on or something. But when you have so much experience of doing something for 10, 20, 30 years, it just really adds a lot to. I don't feel as old as I feel like 10 or 20 years younger, actually, Maybe it has a reverse effect, that I think as we get more experience, we enjoy life more.
I think so. And I think it's that mindset and that attitude that actually helps us not age, or, age slower. I don't know. Maybe that's just my hope and my wish.
Right.
But as you said, even with the power of storytelling, and let's go back to that, with all of the experience that you get as you go through life, along comes all of the stories you have to share as well. And I think people might, if they're trying to get out into public speaking for the first time and they're not used to it, I think they might not realize how much the stories can make a difference and make their talk so much more interesting and compelling, and make the speaker so much more relatable. So could you kind of address that?
Yeah, I think when people are, doing a public speech or a presentation or even going on a podcast, there's this misperception or misconception of it has to be perfect. So it's like, here's a script and you have to memorize the script. We say ditch a script in Rockstar. and we use a set list instead. But they are like, okay, everything has to be perfect, and they can rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. What we're saying about when you're sharing your story is it's just a conversation.
Mm.
And if you talk in visuals, right? Like this is something we talk about with the band too. We just had a band meeting last night and went over this because everyone was like, yeah, I know our group sessions are called band meetings right now.
I love it.
Thanks. So it's like, well, what if I forget the words? And it's like, you're not remembering, you're not memorizing words. You're just having a conversation, And if you think of it that way, that, I think a lot of people let this fear overwhelm them of like, I'm going to screw it up. And here's a fact, regardless of who you listen to or if you're speaking, nobody in your audience is ever going to remember word for word what you say. They're just not. And unless they've got like the, printout going and they're sitting there reading it line by line, or if you're using a teleprompter, they're never going to see everything. But what they will remember is the feeling that they have. So if you're up there presenting something and you're talking about this amazing product that you have, then there should be a feeling associated with that. If you're promoting your book, and your book is your memoir of all these challenges you came through and overcame, and there should be a feeling associated with that. So if you focus on the feeling that you want from the outcome, and don't focus on the actual words, get the feeling first, and then that's what we teach you with the set list. Then what stories do you have in your life that when you put it all together, just like a band has a set list of all the different songs they're playing, right? What's the flow of your show? Do you want to start out really soft and then build up at the end crescendo and then like leave them like on their feet? Or do you want to do the opposite and come out there really excited? And then at the end of your show, we've all been to concerts like that, where they're all just sitting there like thinking, and they're like, wow, that just moved me. That just, I never thought of that before. So if you focus on the feeling and not the words necessarily that you say, and really just share authentic stories, you can't screw it up. You're not reading a script.
There's this is a little bit off the topic, but not really. I've been helping a small group of dancers. They're getting ready for a competition, and I'm going to be competing with them as well. But I'm trying to explain to them, it's like, look, it's not about you. It's about the audience.
Right.
It's about what you want to communicate to the audience, what you want them to feel, what you want them to remember when you do leave the stage.
Right.
And for people who've never done it before, it's a really hard concept to grasp. But when you turn that script around, and even like with my book, it's like, it's not about me, it's about my readers.
Right. Yeah. I think that takes some of the pressure off if people, I still think there's this whole perfection thing. Okay, well, let's look at the people that are on TV, news reporters or presenters and things, and artists and actors and everybody. And they go out and they do a Broadway play, and it's beautiful and it's perfect. Well, do you know how many hours and weeks and months they rehearsed? How many times they went, and I saw this with bands firsthand. We're in a big warehouse, like a sound stage, a rehearsal studio. It's basically like a big warehouse. And they are performing, like sweating, like there's 10,000 people in the venue. There's not one person in there. It's getting your mindset ready to take the stage. It's getting your body, getting everything into that, the synergy, right, of performing. So that when you get to that point where you have an audience in front of you, then it's just natural, and that's, yeah.
Well, and the thing is, people don't know what you're going to say. They don't have any expectation of what they're supposed to be hearing. So if you screw up, who's going to know?
And even you can't screw it up, really.
You can't. And I was telling, one of the girls was like, well, what if I forget? And I'm like, nobody knows your routine. Nobody knows what you're supposed to be doing. If you forget and you stand there and go, oh no, then they'll know. But if you just move through it and pretend like that was exactly what was supposed to happen, then you're home free.
Right. Yes, that's the thing. We got to get out of our head. We got to get in our head first to set the right mindset. But then when it comes to performing, we need to get out of our head of this perfection this imposter syndrome and fear that comes into the brain. And like you said, I mean, you're watching, dancers perform. Nobody in the audience knows what the routine is. Right. So if you, and another thing, I say this a lot in our training of Rockstar and also in the band, I said it last night. You've been to shows with bands where the lead singer forgot the words. And he, she, or they just points the mic at the audience and says, "You guys sing." So when you're doing public speaking, that power of the pause, like if you're thinking of your story, if you're reading a script, it's going to sound very scripted. If you're memorizing, it's going to sound very like, right? But if you're just sharing a story and it's like, well, how'd you get your start in business? 20 years ago, I started and I try, like you change your tone. You can rehearse this and it's not scripted, but you can rehearse it and understand dynamics and vocal and all that. And that's what draws the audience in, that pause. And I think a lot of people are afraid of the pause I did that intentionally, sorry, when it comes to talking. No, but
I'm a ninja. I know all the tricks.
Oprah is very good at this. Obama was really good at this. The power of the pause. Let the audience catch up. And
I just did it too.
Yes,
I think
good job.
people are really afraid of that. They're afraid of the pause because, we always feel like we're bombarded with information in our daily lives anyway, and we never give ourselves a chance to pause. And I think that they feel like they have to keep on and talking and talking and talking to fill the void because they don't know what's going to happen if they have that pause. But I call it the pregnant pause.
Yes.
It's very powerful.
Yes. I would say anyone who's out there public speaking, find your favorite comedian, regardless of what it is. Like mine would be Dave Chappelle. And I know some people like him or don't like him. Find your favorite comedian, Ron White, whoever it is, right? Watch their shows. Watch how they pause intentionally, how they let the audience catch up to the joke, how they'll hold the pause out very long. They'll, God, there's so many people that are masters at this, of where they'll hold the pause so long that the audience becomes uncomfortable. And it's like, this is all a skill. This is a skill, and it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of practice and stuff. But yeah, using the power of the pause when you're talking, especially if you're presenting a business thing and you've just, really gave them something that is like, okay, this product is going to revolutionize, solar energy. And in this year, we're going to do this, and this. And you pause and let people take that in and go like, wow. Like, you know what I mean? There's that's that we talk about that cadence and dynamics and everything. But yeah, there is definitely a power in the pause. And also in conversation, I think there's power in I think a lot of people are worried about saying but when we're just having a conversation and talking to each other, we say because it gives the brain time to catch up. And if we don't say at all, or, well, I don't know, it sounds fake.
Well, I think the I heard is a sign of a thinking brain.
Yes.
It's not in the, I did Toastmasters for six months, which was really,
Yes.
But, the and it's like, it sounded really so overly rehearsed and overly scripted because it didn't seem natural when people were trying to take out all the and then it made them even more nervous. But then I read somewhere that is the sign of a thinking brain. And it's true because it does take a while for some of the messages to sink in and for our brain to kind of digest what it just heard.
Exactly. And I think the tempo of public speaking is a lot, like, especially if, if they say you got 5 minutes to speak, people have a tendency to, except in that case you gave earlier, people have a tendency to speed up, or if people get excited, or if people are like getting near the end of, if they're really dealing with, the fear of public speaking and they're getting near the end, but your audience is listening to what you're saying and the feeling they're getting. So when you just slow it down and, like, don't be in a rush I mean, unless it's like, you know, a union gig where if the clock gets down to 0, you go in overtime, right? You're doing a stadium tour and it's like, they have to be off stage at this time, or we're starting to charge $10,000 an hour. Then you're like, okay, lead singer, when you see it get to 5 minutes, you've got to start wrapping up. But when you're public speaking, don't rush. Conversation with the audience. If you ask them a question, you got to give them time to, you know, so what do you guys think of that? And let them think. And people don't think like that.
Right.
They have to have that. That's a great idea. You know, we should do that. Like, yeah.
So I also want you to talk about one of my favorite subjects in public speaking, and even in speaking just with a friend, a colleague, a family member, is body language, the importance of body language and the power of it.
I forget what the stat is. I've read it different places, but I heard it's like about 80% of our communication is nonverbal. It might be 70 or 80, depending which way you Google, right? But a lot of it has to do with, if you're speaking with confidence and you are just being yourself, and even if you're well rehearsed and all that, like we talk about, your shoulders are going to be a certain way. Your eye contact is going to be a certain way. If you talk with your hands, then talk with your hands. I mean, if you normally, when you're like, you know, okay, you ran into a friend on the street, a high school or college friend you hadn't seen in 20 years, and say, well, what have you been up to? And how you talk to them. And then you go on stage and you have your hands in your pockets, or your hands down by your side, or hands on the podium, and all that. It puts out that if you're nervous inside, and we have ways to, you know, mask that, but really, if you're nervous inside, it's going to show through your body language. And everybody in the audience, even if they don't pick up on the subtle, you know, cues, they're going to feel that energy. But if you walk out there on stage like you're a rock star, and these people want to hear what you have to say, and if you talk with your hands, then talk with your hands. If you're, you know, like Tony Robbins has a different pitch and tempo and everything compared to other coaches, and just really by being your authentic self and just communicating with your audience, that's really what we mean when we say, you know, channel your inner rock star.
And I just want to talk about that one phrase that you said, well rehearsed.
Yeah.
Being well rehearsed does not mean that you're following a particular script. It means that you're very comfortable in what you're saying.
Yes.
I think I don't want people to think well rehearsed means, oh my gosh, I've got to know someone told me when you're giving a speech, you need to know every comma, every period, you know, and I thought, who wants to do that? That just sounds really unnatural.
Yeah, it is. And we don't, excuse me, because we don't think in scripts.
Right.
We don't think when we're having a conversation, we just talk. So that's why we show you with the set list, you have stories that are not word for word, but like, you know, like, well, you know, when I was growing up, you know, and I was, ever since I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a radio DJ. You know what I mean? Like, you have this story. So when we, excuse me, sorry, 1 second.
No problem.
When you have your set list together, right? Rehearsing is going on video, going on Loom and presenting your show, or having, you know, set up your camera and record it. Don't put it on, you know, YouTube or IG or anything. Hey, we're going to rehearse it. Do it privately, but have that like you're talking to the audience, and that one person you're talking to. When we say rehearse, we're talking about you record it and play it back and watch it. And you do it over and over again, and see, you know, and study it, so that when you get on stage in front of the audience, your brain is already so comfortable with you presenting your message that the only variable that changes is now there's people in the audience. And if you have time, if you're a public speaker and you're on, you know, a convention, and they give you time, because I'll tell you, from a sound engineer, we love sound checks, right? And you're a little nervous. It's a big room, and you never played this big room. Reach out to the buyer or the promoter, whoever's promoting the show, and say, hey, I volunteer to be the sound check. I'll come in and do the sound check for, the mic, and I mean, they'll ring out the room first, but do the mic and everything and get in that room. If you're in a big boomy room and you go in there and start talking and you're really comfortable, then when people fill up the room and the noise change, the frequencies, everything gets absorbed, it's going to feel much more comfortable than just walking out on stage, seeing the bright lights, seeing the crowd, and then going, oh, no, I don't know what I'm going to say. So you really want to get to the point where you are so comfortable in any environment you're in by just rehearsing it and feeling really confident with what you're talking about.
It's like any skill.
Yes.
You can't, I didn't walk out on the dojo mat on the floor and start doing black belt techniques. I mean, that would be really not safe, and it would be really ugly. But you always have to start somewhere, and baby steps. And I think when people try something like public speaking, they're thinking at the end result.
Right.
And instead of, how can I put this together? How can I make that first step of saying the first two sentences to my dog without being uncomfortable? So you just have to do it in a way like any other life skill that you want. You have to practice it, and you have to start somewhere, but you have to start.
Yeah, I think because we live in this, world of social media, 15 seconds, instant gratification, all that, we expect that when we're picking up a new skill that we'll learn it right away and master it like right away. Like we were talking off camera about, your the dojo and the black belt experience, and how many years, right? I mean, like you said, day one, you didn't walk in there and have a black belt. It took a long time. And it's the same thing when you're public speaking, same thing when you're going on a podcast or going on TV, it's those baby steps, like you said. But really being comfortable with what you're talking about. And if you're really talking about something that you're passionate about, then it's going to come through in your message.
So let's kind of segue a little bit and talk about, because, we're talking about people who might be promoting a product or a business or, in a business environment or a book. Let's talk about personal communication, because I think a lot of everything that you're saying really can be applied to personal conversation and interactions or smaller groups. Even having maybe a difficult conversation with a friend or a family member, of how to be able to maybe even prepare for it, especially if it's going to be difficult or uncomfortable. So do you have any advice or any tips or anything about that?
Like in dealing with a conflict situation, or just kind of
let's just start with effective communication for someone that really well, because I think a lot of people don't really know how to communicate effectively, even with sometimes with a spouse or a friend or a colleague.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be direct. I mean, if you're into, we don't specialize in like conflict, media relations and all that. We don't work with politicians, thank God.
Good for you.
But I mean, when you're having a conversation with somebody, it's just you and that person having a conversation. So if you are, really direct and honest and authentic, and you have to talk about something that is hard to talk about, that's where like you can't use a script for that. You know what I mean? You're going to pause, and you're going to like really think about what you're going to say before. And I would say a lot of it has to do too, getting in the right mindset, whether you're walking on stage, whether you're going in front of a TV camera, or whether you're talking to somebody. It's getting in the right mindset of what's the outcome you want from this, what feeling that you want this person to have at the end, or as because of this communication. So you can take the same skills you would use in, a TED Talk, and use that into, okay, you've got to talk to your son or daughter about something really heavy. Well, what's the outcome you want? And what's the feeling that you want them to have? And that's where I think body language really plays a big part, because if you're passionate about what you're talking about, you're a parent and you're talking to your kid, and it's something that's really difficult, and they can see it in your face and your body language, that like, you just care about them. And this is tough for them to hear, but this is you care about them. It's going to come through in your tone. It's going to come through in the tempo and everything. I wouldn't say that's like a skill you can learn. I think that what I mean by learning the skill is take how you naturally talk to people, but and turn that into a skill of using it to when you're, because you don't have to switch it off. You don't have to talk one way to your family and then talk a different way to your audience. I don't think. I think you can change some things up, but really the tone of who you are and the authenticity of who you are and the feeling and the passion that you have is really because you're the same person in both situations. So.
And it's what we talked about earlier. It's really not about you. It's about the audience being, your child or your spouse or whomever it is that you're having the conversation with and what they're feeling.
Yes.
Excellent. Great communication.
Thanks.
Well, tell us a little bit more about your business.
Okay. So, Rockstar Media Training Program, and we call our clients that join band members. We just had our first band meeting last night. And I'll tell you one thing, for anybody who's out there running their business by themselves, you don't have to do it alone. Find a team of people, and the professionals are going to charge because that's what makes them professional. But find a team of people that really add value to what you want to do, and really be open to having that, collaboration. And that's what we had like at our band meeting last night, is everybody's throwing different things in there. And it's like, wow, like different, like we were talking about intros, how do you introduce yourself and talk about your why and things. So, everybody would go around the room and talk about theirs. And then, and I go, me and Sandy go, well, what do you think of that? And they're like, well, I don't think it really, and someone else would just drop gold, right? And be like, wow. And so if you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're a coach, you're an author, you don't have to do it alone. Find yourself a team, find yourself the professional team, but also find yourself that, that support team, right? And that's why we call the band members, band members.
So, I love that. I love the band members. So I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So do you have your band meetings? They're online. So do you work with people all over the country?
Yes, we work with people all over the planet. And we work with different time zones and things. We do the band meetings on Zoom, so everybody can talk and no one has to like raise their hand or anything. Everyone just kind of talks and hangs out. And we really, we had so many breakthroughs last night. It's just amazing. And then we also have the Facebook group where, the band members can post up. It's very private. We find that when you're putting your messaging together, you want to do what the rock stars do. They rehearse in private. They don't practice messaging on shows. They don't go on IG and go, hey, I'm trying this out. They make sure they get their messaging together in private with their team, right? So when you do go on a show, when you do go on IG or TV or on a stage, you are dialed. So it's really the rehearsal part. And that's what we focus on with the band is putting it all together.
So how do people, contact you? How do they join the band?
Join the band. You can sign up for the Rockstar Media Training Program. Join the band. Join Sandi D and I and all the coaches and authors and creative entrepreneurs over at allthingsrelaxstudios.com. You can follow us on IG at All Things Relax Studios as well. And we are really active on LinkedIn. I'll tell you, LinkedIn has changed in the last 6 months. At least in my opinion.
I've always really liked LinkedIn. That's my favorite platform.
Yeah, we're on LinkedIn. We're actually building a really great network of other band members and working with other coaches and, producers and publicists and everybody. LinkedIn is really where it's at for us. So you can follow us, connect with us over there.
Okay. And what about, just tell us a little bit more about the podcast and about let me see, my notes, the Queen of Podcast Zen.
Yes. So Sandi D, my partner, the Queen of Podcast Zen. So what makes her the Queen of Podcast Zen is that she's an introvert Virgo, and she was terrified of public speaking. And, when the Great Vacation, the pandemic hit and touring came to a halt and all that stuff. And we decided to launch the podcast. And it's funny because I'm the extrovert Gemini who has no problem going on mic or on stage. I'm behind the scenes as a producer. So Sandi is front and center as the host. So this is why we created the Rockstar, is we took the same techniques. So she overcame that. Now she is a brilliant host and has this show where she interviews like your friend Victoria and a ton of people. So yeah, we find that it's really good to, when you're trying to figure out what your message is and what your voice is, having a show or being a guest on shows is a great way to really get that practice in and really, really fine tune what your why is. And yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, because I told you before we started recording that I am the ultimate extrovert, and I really am. But when it came for me to, before I even started a podcast, of course, I didn't know what a podcast was or why I would ever want one. But I was, a guest on somebody's show. So it was the first time I was going to be on a podcast. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I was so nervous. I was so stressed. And it's funny because, I am a dancer and I would be able to walk on stage and be calm, cool, and collected. And that was no problem. Right. But to be verbalizing and especially talking about myself, it was like, ugh, it was hard. It was really hard to get started.
It's a skill. It's a skill.
Yeah.
It's just like, with what you're doing with martial arts. I mean, it's a skill. Now, a lot of people can see, they can walk into a show. It's just like seeing a band that, the Rolling Stones or something, that they make it look so easy. And it's like, no, that's 50 years of work. I mean, it's like, like with your martial arts, that's like 10 years, over 10 years of work. That's a long time to do something. That's how you get better at it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I've had this conversation with other people before that people on the outside, they just see the end result.
Right.
And they have no idea how much blood, sweat, tears, energy, effort, breakthroughs and failures and getting up and trying again. It's a process, but like you said, that's not something you want the audience to see.
You do all that in private, and that's why having a supportive group, being part of people that are on the same journey with you or that can help each other out. And you don't have to do that in front of your clients. If you're a coach, you don't want to go to your clients that are paying you and say, okay, guys, I'm working on you do what the professionals do, the artists do. They go into a private rehearsal studio with their team. And a lot of the artists that you see on stage, they have coaches that come in and teach them how to stand on stage, teach guitar players how to stand. A lot of the bigger shows, especially with lighting and pyro and stuff, it's choreographed. They have to hit their mark every time. So it's very similar to the dancing. Maybe it's not as much choreography, but it still is like, it's a skill that you have to learn, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, you got to put the time in. Otherwise, it's just not gonna happen.
Otherwise, yeah. But the end result, when everyone loves it and you feel like, oh, I'm this rock star, then it's all worth it. All those hours or weeks or months, it's all worth it.
Well, G, it has been an honor to talk to you. An honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Tell us one more time, how to find you, what the link to your website. It's of course going to be on the show notes, but I really like for the guests to articulate and say, where to find them.
Perfect. You can check us out at allthingsrelaxstudios.com. You can follow us on IG at All Things Relax Studios and connect with Sandi and I over on LinkedIn.
Okay. And you have given us so much really great information, fabulous pearls of wisdom. Is there one thing that you would say would be the most important for someone who's sitting here thinking, I really want to get started on improving my communication skills, getting out in public, doing public speaking? What would that be? That one thing?
Follow your intuition.
Ooh, that's good.
Follow, we're big believers on the law of attraction and manifesting and everything. And if you're in a circle and your intuition is saying these aren't the right people, this isn't the right, as we say, band, right? Maybe you need to change bands. But if you find that band or we say band, but that group or that coach or somebody that you really connect with, and follow your intuition. Yeah. I think we, as business owners, we second guess ourselves too much.
We second guess ourselves a lot. And I think that we don't pay attention to our intuition because
Right.
it's been kind of weaned out of us. I mean, it's a very powerful thing.
Yes, it
And
is.
I know that, it's like, oh no, you're just exaggerating or don't, that's not really true. But if it's in your gut, you listen to it because it's usually right.
Yeah, absolutely. The sixth sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. And you can
Yeah.
actually fine tune that just like you
Mm.
can any other skill,
Yes.
but you have
Yeah.
to pay attention to it first.
Yeah. You have to have a clear mind and be open to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, once again, G, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks again for having me on the show.
And everybody, thank you for listening. I really appreciate you as well. And do check out the band. Go to G's website and do check out the podcast and connect with him on LinkedIn if you have any questions or you need to get started with better communication and being able to have a message that's clear and concise. Do contact him. I know he can help you, he and his team. And remember, all the world is your stage and you want to present yourself in the best possible light. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.